As to his four questions, the talent or skill Mark would love to have instantly would be knowing how to fence, which is like sword fighting as opposed to building something on a border. The thing that he would save out of his burning house is a collection of Edward Gorey first editions. He has over 180 first edition Edward Gorey books, which is really cool. Pirates versus ninjas, no hesitation, he said pirates. No one has chosen ninjas, and this really bothers me. Because like one really well-placed ninja, like hidden on a boat, is just gonna kill them all, like in their sleep. And no one is seeing this, and this really bothers me, but that's fine. Finally, between cake or pie, he chose pie, and preferably cherry pie. So, his talk is called Cold Reading is Now a Survival Skill. Please welcome Mark Edward.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. This is great. First of all, I want to thank the host for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to people. And so thanks, Bruce. And thanks, Margaret, for thinking of me. My talk today, I've done some talks about cold reading at several different conferences. So I don't want to just launch into this without asking, and I have to have you raise your hands. How many people know what cold reading is? Raise your hand. Good. Oh, that takes a lot. I can save a lot of time that way. Most of us who are skeptics understand what cold reading is. It is trying to get somebody to believe that you know things about them when you really don't. You're just using it as a skill. So the last couple conferences that I've spoken at, I've talked with Ray Hyman. If you don't know about Ray Hyman, he has an excellent book on cold reading, booklet that he will send you. It's a big thing now with mentalists. My background is in magic and mentalism, so I learned cold reading when I worked as a medium up at the Magic Castle. It was expected that you knew how to tell fortunes and know things about people. So I was fascinated. I've always been fascinated with psychics and mediums, but I've always been a skeptic, and I've always studied what they do. So my lecture is about, what is cold reading? Using your best guesses in a systematic approach, an observation, and also having the confidence to keep a straight face. Okay? That has a lot to do with it. It's acting. It is a skill set. There's nothing paranormal or supernatural about it. So, since we all know about it, I have a thick bunch of notes here. We accept the basic assumptions and the methodology. It's a framework that psychics and mediums use to con us. So I don't have to tell you about the people that we see on television, on Dr. Phil and all these shows, everywhere. I'm trying to get beyond that. So what I want to do is evolve the paradigm now, okay? I want to take a shift from just talking about cold reading, oh yeah, body language, this and that. I really thought about this, and I said, you know what? I'm going to evolve this whole idea of cold reading and psychics as entertainment, which is what they are. They're performers, okay? And say to everybody that, we are now in, I like to call it the golden age of the con, okay? And I mean, if you thought psychics and mediums had a heyday back in the 1900s with the Victorian seance and all that, we are now in a post-truth era. I'm sure you've all heard this now, right? The post-truth era, and lies are a corrupting influence, and we are in the middle of it. So I'm trying to say, and this is what my talk is going to be about, it's no longer just an entertainment and something that we can just slough off as being an irritating, thing that you see on a street corner with a gypsy. It is now going to become, for people like us, who I like to think are critical thinkers, it's a survival skill, okay? We need to understand everything that a cold reader does and more to be able to just survive and get through the next 8 or 10 years or whatever it's going to take. Now, no, seriously, and I want to make sure you understand, It's become an accepted business model. Lying is an accepted business model now. Look at what we've gone through the last year, okay? The lies are just, but they're accepted, and I'm going to talk about that. So when you say you're a psychic, as far as science knows, you're lying. When you work as a psychic, you're constantly observing, evaluating, and making quick-paced judgments about people, places, and situations. That's all they do. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to draw some parallels. The CIA, the FBI, they call it situational awareness. Have you heard this lately? How many people have heard about situational awareness? It's starting to seep into our consciousness now, okay? It's not fortune-telling. It's situational awareness. Where's the nearest exit? What do I need to say? See something, say something. What do you think a psychic does? They see something, and they say something, okay? So these skills, that's exactly what psychics do. They pay attention, they listen, and then they speak up, okay? So the next time you hear one of these people, start to think about it in a different way, because what they're really doing is they are educating people, not just us, but everybody. So my challenge right now in my life is to try and say, okay, how can I get my word about this to the biggest amount of people? So that when they see this, it's no longer, oh, he was such an incredible spiritual guide. It's more like, no, I need to listen to understand the techniques that this person is using. So I'm convinced many of the techniques used by cold readers posing as psychics will shift from being these dangerous paranormal entertainments to a survival skill for all of us who are willing to look at it that way instead of just picking up another book that's, I Talk to the Dead. It's tired stuff. We're past that now. I am, and I'm trying to get you all to maybe go with me there. Because if we get people to talk about it, it'll become part of the dialogue. So, and it's very important, I do not want you to think, as I talk about some of these parallels, that this is a conspiracy theory or political rant. These are observations from a person who watched the psychic industry grow. And if I seem to be stretching it a bit thin from time to time, please forgive me, because I am terrified of what I see going on. But I think that there's hope, because it's just gotten to such a ridiculous level that, the pendulum, we don't need a pendulum anymore. We need a wrecking ball, okay? And that is what it's going to take. So, I wrote a book about it many years ago called Psychic Blues. Yes, I'm pitching my book. I just happen to have a couple. If you don't know about my book, basically what I did was infiltrate the psychic business, and believe me, it is a business, okay? There's very little metaphysical or spiritual aspirations going on with the people who run the Psychic Friends Network, and it's in my book. You can read all about it. It's dark humor. It's not a debunking book. I did not want to write a debunking book. You know why? Because it narrows my audience. I want everybody to read this. I want the people who are walking through the airport to pick it up and read it and go, wow, I thought this was real. Because most people take it for granted it's real. It's not. So I'm merely pointing out what I see as parallels that are inescapable, and we're going to become more aware of them. And the people who are in charge have really become aware of it, and they are using these techniques. A couple of years ago, I had a political group approach me. They wanted to talk to me about forming a new kind of psychic network. No, I'm serious. It was going to be on computer, and you would be able to talk to the psychic on the screen. It was going to use Skype, but it was also going to use an information interface so that when you paid with your credit card, you would see the psychic on your screen, but the psychic would see your face and also all of your information scrolling along the side of the computer. It's funny, but guess what? I won't even say the name of this. It had to do with a certain Mormon politician who was involved in this, and I'm not making this up. It really happened. So it's the intention, okay? When you are lying for a living, you have intent to make money or create a power base. You can say something that's untrue or unproven and now totally get away with it. Have we seen this? The media does not separate lies from truth. The media lets people lie and get away with it. We've seen it, okay? Because liars lie with impunity, they are shameless about their lies, run right through it, and have no shame about it at all. They don't care about being called a liar. Does this sound familiar? Psychics don't care if you call them a liar. They just go right through it and keep on going, and they make millions and millions of dollars. So advertising is the same sort of thing. My father, God rest his soul, was an advertising executive. Okay? So maybe this is why I'm interested in this, because H.G. Wells once said advertising is legalized lying. And it is, because what we do is we take a product or an item and we push it right to the edge where it can be called false advertising, and then they back up a few little bits, right? That's what a psychic does. They take it right to the legal edge of where they could be personally sued, and they get a 501c3 and they get a religious exemption, and they're able to work the system. So lie like a true sociopath with a smile on your face and be unapologetically shameless. Does this sound familiar? So if you can tell an exciting lie, if you can put your lie out in front of people, it will be remembered in today's world, broadcast, streamed, and gone viral almost instantly. Nobody fact checks any psychic claim. So people have learned from the psychics. We have evolved, or not we, but certain entities certainly have. So being psychic is nothing more than having the ability and willingness to tell a total stranger exactly what you see and feel about them without any regard for whether they may or may not want to hear it. That is all it is. And suddenly, you were so accurate, because most of us have a conscience. Most of us have a heart. We don't look at somebody and read them and tell them exactly what we think about them. It's called using systematic awareness cues. So what I'm trying to get to here, the line between interrogator and spiritual advisor has now disappeared. Okay? Forget about the things, the neon sign that says spiritual advisor. It's a frickin' interrogator. Get used to it. Okay? The labels are now interchangeable. Hacking. We've heard so much about this. Hacking is not much different from what a psychic does. Hacking is, let me find a weakness in the system and exploit it. This is what a psychic does. You look for a weakness in that person, in their system, and you exploit it until you can no longer get away with it. So some of these terms that are now fashionable, profiling, that's one that people, they don't want to say it. And I've noticed, if you say profiling, it's like, oh, that's a racist thing. No, profiling is the use of personal characteristics or behavior patterns to make generalizations about a person. That's what they do at the airport. They may not say it or admit it, but it sounds like what a psychic does, doesn't it? So, we now know that waterboarding and enhanced interrogation techniques don't work. The people in the know that. Want to know how the new generation of CIA interrogators are getting positive results and confessions? Pretend to be their friends. Does this sound familiar? This is what a psychic does, folks. They pretend to be your friends. They're open, they listen to you. How about rapport building and providing comfortable physical surroundings? That's what they're doing now. It's like the neon psychic shop down the street, isn't it? You don't look into these psychic shops and see a dumpy-looking garage. You see a very comfortable environment with low lighting and nice couches and chairs and pillows everywhere. Be comfortable so that I can draw you in. So it's the same corner store, just different intentions. So am I starting to sound like a conspiracy theorist? I don't mean to. I really don't. I'm just trying to say it's bigger now. It's bigger than cold reading. It's bigger than these dime store psychics. So one military official working in this new era of gentler mind probing said, it's mostly on how to get a person to buy a certain brand of toothpaste. Okay? So they've learned fake news, reality shopping. We're hearing all this stuff come up, but we know there's something smells about it, don't we? So I myself have seen the psychic thing over the last 15 or 20 years, and I've known that it smells, but it's just gone right on. Okay, so now it seems to be toning down because we have bigger issues at stake. So cold reading is not a magic trick. A lot of magicians try to do it. If you approach cold reading as a trick or a power play, you will only project just that. So a lot of people would like to be able to do cold reading, but they don't have the ability to speak in the manner that is needed to get the confidence of the other person. This is what Ray Hyman and I talk about all the time. If you can speak with even the tiniest bit of compassion and empathy, you're in. Do that and you've got it made in the psychic business. So why do lies like this stick? Why does this happen? Why are we in the middle of this? Because people want to be lied to. We love our nightmares. We can't help ourselves but be drawn into it. We want someone to talk to about them who will listen with seeming impartiality. Who doesn't want that? And that's why my book, Psychic Blues, is called Psychic Blues, because the psychic part I object to, or the blues part of it is I don't see anything wrong with getting an opinion from a random person, and maybe even having to pay for it. But when somebody tries to get a hook in you and keep you coming back over and over to take advantage of you, then I have a problem with that. So I'm on the fence. I don't hate psychics. In fact, some of their artifice and the clever ruses they use, I'm quite fond of, because it's brilliant, but it plays on our feelings and our emotions. And when the hook goes in, I don't like it. So liars lie with impunity. You want to be a fake psychic? Well, there's another redundant statement. There is no such thing as a fake psychic. So I've said this over and over for years. Make bold statements as if they are fact. Sound familiar? I said this before the last election cycle went through. Make bold statements. You can say anything. I could say, we're going to find an ancient Mayan artifact on the moon next year. And I would probably get that stream somewhere if I said it in the right places. So what's the difference between a standard cold reading and what a professional psychic does is that, nothing except a professional psychic tells you it's coming from a spirit or supernatural source. It's performance rather than interrogation. So some of the people who have called themselves psychic or mediums in the past have seen some of my presentations and realized that what they've been doing all along was only cold reading. And it was an unconscious situational awareness that made them think they had some special powers. They were fooling themselves. Okay? So if you're intuitive and you seem to sense things about people, big deal. Now it's a little more serious. So now we need to strengthen our awareness of the subtle methods that confront us without the supernatural slant, but which can have the same disastrous effects. The media willingly allows liars to have a platform when they are an exciting liar. Okay? If you can lie and you're exciting and those ratings start coming in, if I repeat the same words over and over in an exciting way, eventually you will believe it as truth, cosmic or not. Okay? It's what propaganda is all about. If it's even slightly exciting, people will repeat it because it's different. Something goes wrong with the corner psychic. Psychic tells you something that doesn't work. He says Venus is in retrograde, it doesn't mean anything unless I make it mean something. I say mercury is in Gatorade, but that's a totally different thing. So this is how memes, propaganda, fake news, and psychic readings work. What if I made the statement, I want to know how many people have heard this, Moscow has no subways. Have you heard this one? How many people have heard this before? Nobody in this room, I'm surprised. Moscow has no subways. Well, if you haven't heard it, it's not true. But if I repeat it enough and enough people are given platforms to pass it on, it becomes true to the people who don't fact check. So it's the same thing. We don't fact check about any of this because we assume that it's coming from a higher power that doesn't need their facts checked because they don't relate to facts on that level. That's what I'm talking about, psychic readings. So the same old tricks, dodges, and verbal deceptions have been around for thousands of years, repeated endlessly by those who would part you from your money. So what makes a good reading so memorable? Because you can generate hits through information the sitter may unconsciously give you through tells. Memorized and played back at the right moment in the psychodrama, they come off as miraculous, okay? Even more accurate information is readily available on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media outlets. Psychic entertainers call this hot readings or pre-show. And one of my favorite things as a mentalist is to use pre-show. Pre-show is a gathering of information. You gather it before the show, and then basically you walk on and you seem to know all these things, but you're just relating things that you've memorized by looking at the person's Facebook page or gathered information. I mean, these methods are ancient, okay? Now it's called data mining, okay? You know what I'm talking about. And predictive analysis. This is what the upper level intelligence work call these things. Data mining and predictive analysis, you know. As a mentalist, pre-show work is my favorite form of deception because there's no props, there's no fancy boxes or dancing girls. You just seem to know all this stuff. How did they know that? And those of us who've been investigating psychics for the last 10 years and trying to trap them or sting them if we can, know that there was a time when they were really using a lot of this kind of data mining. Now, they're lazier than ever because they don't care. Now they just use the flimsiest cold reading, and if you don't believe me, just watch them, you know. Watch them on television and see how just, it's sickening to me. And the real magician in this is the editor who takes 3 hours of taping and cuts it down to a half hour. Where do you think all the misses went? So we tend to remember the hits and forget the misses. And that is what we are being fed, and that is what we are being fed in the news and other areas now too. So what I'm saying is I feel the greater entities have learned from the psychics what to do to get underneath the skin of everybody. So and one of my favorite lines I've heard 1,000 times, and I hear it all the time when I perform, is a person says, "There is no way in the world he could have known that." Oh, yes, there is, okay? It's just like Joe said, you know, once you understand the trick, it's really very simple. It's acting. So, you know, when as a performer, you told me nearly everything I needed to know as soon as you walked in. Body language, tells, common sense. You told me 100 things I can work into a reading just by the way you dress. Never mind the dozens of comments, muscle twitches, eye movements, casual gestures that spoke to me, because I'm trained, not so much anymore, to watch for them. Most people are not. The average person has little or no time for accessing or caring enough to pay the kind of attention a trained psychic or interrogator, sociopath, con man, or liar has in their toolbox. They are paid to watch and decode. Most people cannot even hold eye contact for more than 2 or 3 seconds. Read Joe Navarro's book. It's called What Every Body is Saying, written by a former FBI interrogator. It's now a book every mentalist and phony psychic reads to become more savvy. So it's called What Every Body Knows, and it is really amazing. I've really enjoyed reading it. So another ploy the new breed of interrogators and psychics are using with success is using, guess what? Humor. Who doesn't like a good laugh? Hey, in the case of the paid psychic, if they happen to be wrong or slightly off, it only adds to the realness of their reading. You know, they humanize themselves by being wrong. They're not perfect. They're not godlike. Oh, he didn't get my address exactly right. He missed it by 2 numbers. So the CIA and the FBI can't afford to be wrong in life or death situations, you know, but a medium can't waterboard people either. So to extract information, they take your interaction becomes a spiritual thing, you see, namnast, you know. It becomes two minds trying to merge together. And another big method that I was reading about is expressing concern, you know. You express concern for the detainee, you know. That's what a psychic does. And it's recognized even more effective with interrogators. So as in the psychic seems generally concerned for your well-being, so you open up to them. You want them to help you, so you help them either consciously or unconsciously. If you have a heart, you're toast, okay? So, and most people do, even if they are in Gitmo. They want to just get out of there, you know? So they're not going to waterboard you. They're going to probably start using psychics. I would not be surprised. So, you know, you drag religion and prayer into it like Sylvia Browne did, and you get a 901c3 and you rake even more money in. So what are some of the latest trends in cold reading? How am I doing on time? I never look at a watch. I'm halfway there. So what are the latest trends in cold reading? Like I said, using the internet and data mining, credit card information, although we saw a blip on the radar using that, but now I think a lot of the bigger names, if I can even use that term, turns my stomach to think of it, but the bigger names don't even bother anymore because they don't have to. If you're on the ascendant, if you're just a young punk psychic, you got to do a little pre-show. You got to do some credit card searches and get a few ringers in the audience because I know where you're sitting. I know your seat number, and I know that you use your credit card to pay for that seat, so I can look you up. Only takes a few minutes, and you only need 4 or 5 ringers in an audience this size, and people will be kneeling at the end of the show. They won't be applauding. They will be kneeling. So that was a trend that some of us were spotting and watching, and we found out, you know, 95% of them still get off with the worst possible cold reading. Let's see, where am I? Let me skip ahead a little here. So as with learning from a magic show, running back the tape, gee, did I say tape? Running back whatever you were looking at, if you manage to record some of these performers and viewing it, you know, the latest superstar mediums will allow you to pick up and spot the most glaring missteps that went by in a volley of verbiage the first time you watched it, but who has the time or cares to take the time to watch it a second or third time? I do. Okay? I do, because it's hilarious. And it's a technique. And now it's crept into some pretty higher levels. I tend to think they're lower levels, but you decide. I let you decide. This is not a political rant. So nothing Sylvia Browne ever said ever turned out to be a fact. And if you look up her webpage, you'll find out, you know, because she was so brassy and had this no-nonsense bitch attitude, audiences had no option but to assume such a character must be real. How could this woman be so awful and not be so real? She was horrible. If anybody ever see her work besides myself, few people, she was cruel. She was mean-spirited. She didn't care. So now the new trend is I call them fuzzy sweater psychics, okay? Fuzzy sweater psychics are like the psychic next door, you know? Nobody cares, you know, they seem to be just somebody who just came out of nowhere, and they seemed like such a nice person. They were brought up in a nice community, and they can talk to dead people, you know. And I'm not even going to mention any names because they trot a new one out every year. There's a new one that comes out. And to me, it's You know, if they had the ability to talk to dead people, they'd be the most dangerous person on the planet. What is wrong with people? I keep beating people over the head with this, but they don't listen to me. I mean, if they really could do it, they would be in a bunker somewhere with their brain wired up by the government or somebody. They wouldn't be walking around on TV going, oh, your mother wore a hat. You know, was it a green hat? But people don't think. So that's sort of what my book is about. It's like, wait, you know, stop. Think about it. You know, it's a social conversation, I think, that really needs to be out there. So, you know, places, nightly news give liars and cons a platform as a star figure. He or she is automatically elevated into the conversation. So we need to see that understand the manipulation and how to accept the verbal deception and nonverbal information more than ever. George Orwell. Sorry, George, you missed it by, you know, a few years, but I saw a cartoon that was like a picture of somebody taking the 1984 and taking it from the fiction shelf and putting it on their nonfiction shelf. Very, very good image, you know. So cold reading is just the tip of the iceberg. This talk is just a start, okay? Because I want people to think about it as, you know, a lot of people say, oh, what's the harm? Well, the harm is sometimes hard to say, depending on, again, what level you want to put this at. If it touches your life, you know, there's a huge difference between reading palms at a Halloween party and being able to understand or know what somebody with a bomb strapped on their body is going to do, right? That's a whole spectrum of difference. But it's observation, it's situational awareness, it's see something, it's say something. So as far as people who profess to be psychics and mediums, they are most assuredly not all harmless old gypsies. That said, as a skeptic as well as an entertainer, I've had to learn to pick my battles. So that's why I choose to try and elevate this away from all the card tricks and all that stuff. Come on, you know? We're in some really scary times. So go to Tim Farley's whatstheharm.org if you have any question about what the harm in psychics can be. So I was going to leave you with a couple more thoughts. You know, really what I'm just trying to do is get people to stop and think. It's what I learned as a magician. I quickly got tired of just saying, ha ha, I fooled you. You don't understand how I did this. I'm somehow a better person than you. It's just boring. What I really wanted to do is get people to think. So I've tried to change the way I look at audiences and people and get them to think. So what is more likely? This is a term that I think we should all pass on. If you have a mother or a father or an aunt or an uncle and they're steeped in this whole medium thing, this psychic thing, and they're going to a psychic, what is more likely? You're not attacking them, you're not debunking them, you're not making fun of them, you're just saying, hey, what is more likely? That this person talking to me is in touch with angels and spirits, or that they are trained to manipulate my emotions to get me to pay them? Simple. What is more likely? Okay? So I always say nothing is impossible, just less likely. You know, as a magician, I've seen things that have totally blown me away, but I stop myself from saying, oh, this is a supernatural event at the Magic Castle. You know, stuff does happen. Amazing things, coincidences like that thing Joe just showed with the two guys, stuff happens. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's supernatural if you step back and say, what is more likely? So we are awash in outrageous lies and mumbo-jumbo. In 2015, $1 billion in free press coverage for a one-time reality TV star. People become angrier and angrier. They want answers, and they want them right now. So whenever this unstable situation occurs and people want easy answers, there's always someone there on the corner who will magically step forward and sell them one. Branding and all that comes into this. So buyer beware, look around. We are a voice in the wilderness. We can get people to think we might make a difference somewhere to someone down the line. I mean, if we look at how many people are in this group compared to the people who might be in West LA at the New Age conference, it would really be depressing, okay? But I do not tend to look at that because it only takes one or two of us positioned in the right place at the right time to cause a little social disorder. And I'm all for that. I consider myself an activist, but I'm picking my battles because it's very depressing to go on a television show and show people how some of these things are done and then have them at the end ask me for a reading. And it has happened over and over and over. So it's almost as if by disclaiming what I do and saying that I'm not real, I'm a total charlatan, they think he must be the real deal. So you're laughing, but this is a reality. It is. If you talk to a lot of mentalists who are really good at what they do, because a lot of mentalists will do a disclaimer, and yet people will still come up to them and say, I need you to get in touch with my dead uncle. It's frustrating because I'm at a point in my life where I want to do, like I said, get to the most people as possible, but I'm looking for the right outlet because there are many of us here who have pitched television shows and done TV pilots and been on TV shows. They don't want skeptical programming. I feel like George Carlin. They don't want you to think, okay? I mean, they really don't. Boy, do I sound like a conspiracy theorist? It's us, folks. It's us. So, Dr. Phil, really? He's not even a real doctor, okay? No one holds these people accountable. If we are to survive as a species, I have to believe the next 10 years are going to be crucial. Teach your children and grandchildren how to use critical thinking. It starts with fairy tales and fortune cookies. You know, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with fantasy and hope. But this is something I learned. Hope is not a strategy. Okay? We sit around and hope for things to get better. Nothing will happen. So I love a good ghost story and a puzzling magic trick, but I don't let my life decisions be made on what these tales may entertain me with, okay? So, as we all learned back in the 60s, question authority, pay attention, ask yourself what is more likely, question everything and everybody. Boy, do I sound like a nut, don't I? In closing, I want to quote someone from whom I have lifted a few concepts. His name is Ari Rabin-Haft, and his excellent article on lying, liars, and politics. It's a very good piece to listen to. If we want to change the belief, if we want the change we believe in, electing good people isn't enough. Fighting for the causes we believe in isn't enough. We actually have to defeat this group and recognize that without truth, there can be no improvement in our society. And then one more by George Orwell. During times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. That's it. So, a couple of questions.
Nicely done, Mark. Only the true Messiah will deny his divinity. All right, I'm not the Messiah. He is the Messiah. Who's got a question? Who's got a question?
Anybody have a question, or are you just stunned? And
where are we? Over here. Oh, all right. We'll start from here. We'll zip on over.
I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. What is it?
7. 7? You're lying.
I ran all the way over here for that. In the back, yes? Okay, hold on.
See, I'm trying not to perform, but it's
tough, right? It's tough, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm not sure that I really heard this, but have I heard that some police departments actually contact psychics to find missing people?
Oh, yeah. But
Yeah.
but that's
Why?
a lot of that is put out by the psychics themselves. What it is it's a way to get publicity. The psychic they're vultures. We in the movement have been calling them grief vampires, because what they do is they see a crime and they will go right to the doorstep. Say there's a missing child, they'll go right to the parent's doorstep and say, "Hey, I'm a psychic. I'm willing to help you." And then if the parents who will want any information they can get to try and find their child, you can imagine, the parents will say when the news come or the police come, we want this psychic to work with you. And then the psychic can turn around and make it a publicity event and say, I'm working with the police on this case. But I think if Ben Radford were here, he would tell you, because he's researched this thoroughly in a book, there's not one single crime in the history of the United States that was solved by a psychic. All they tend to do is lead the police on wild goose chases. Nothing ever happens. It's a myth, and it was propagated a lot by television and movies that had people going to psychics, and the psychic sees a vision and all that. Never happened. So you believed a lie. Sorry. Okay.
I read that there are psychics who are sincere. They actually believe they have the ability and will deny that they're frauds. And
Right, of course.
no, I mean, are they self?
Which psychic would say I'm a fraud?
Well, no, I agree if you are, yeah. But it just seems that there are people who are self-delusional. I mean,
Right. Well, to quote some of my book, what I have learned, and again, I like to stress this, so please pay attention for the next moment. These are only my observations made through 35 years of looking at this phenomenon, which I don't like to call it that, of the psychic business. I would say 95% of the people who I've been in contact with in that world were complete and utter charlatans. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were con artists. The other 5%, maybe there's 2.5% of people who are totally deluded or out of their skulls. They're hearing voices because they're off their meds. You know, there are people who are untreated schizophrenics who hear voices tell them things. So there are a lot of people who are deluded and believe they are doing good, but they can be totally nuts too. And then the other 2.5%, there's some wiggle room. There are some truly empathic, intuitive people out there. I met them, and they do care, and they will help you. But when they're not offset by the other 97.2% of all of the bad that's out there. So if you find somebody who you can talk to who is, like you said, empathic and you trust them, go for it. But buyer beware, because as soon as they say, oh, you know, I need to pray for you, you're going to have to bring me a sock full of money, and then I'll take the curse off you, run, okay? Because when I used to do this, and I was doing it, I admit I did it, Randy did it, Ray Hyman did it, a lot of people have done it. I would tell people, I've told you everything you need to know. I don't ever want to talk to you again. Do not come back to me. And they appreciate that. But again, you know what happens? You tell somebody that, they want to come back to you. Because they figure, well, why not? What he told me happened. Well, it's because I have some common sense. That's all I shared with you was common sense. So, did I answer your question? Sort of. Okay, yes.
There's one in the back. Here we go.
As a student and someone who's looking for, trying to figure out what they want to do for the rest of their life, how would one be able to get into this business? Not necessarily as a medium or a psychic, but as a FBI agent or a CIA agent.
Yes.
Profiler. How would I get into this profession?
Which profession?
Reading or mentalist.
Well, if you're in the CIA or the FBI, don't get into mentalism because you won't make a living at it, and you're much better off being a CIA or an FBI agent.
Okay.
I didn't make that choice in my youth, but I remember in the 60s, I remember seeing an ad in the newspaper that they were actually looking for people to sign up for the CIA, and I did consider it. But at that time, like with Joe, it was the Vietnam War, and it was not really the best place to be when you were 20 years old, so I didn't do it. But if you want to be a CIA agent, they'd be happy to talk to you. Just make sure your record is really clean.
You could study magic also.
Yeah,
you
could study. Start by reading some good magic books and see if it's what you really want to do to your life, because It
just expands it. I'll be back. So we
One
got one up
more?
front. Yes, here we go.
Hi.
Hi.
I read something, I think, in Times Magazine in the 80s. I
Yep.
just want to say it and tell me, have you ever heard about that or not?
What was it?
What I read was Nancy Reagan had a
An
psychic.
astrologer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And she was, directing our President
Yes,
Reagan.
absolutely.
That's correct.
Yes, that is
Wow,
correct.
that's something.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. That
He
the
was
most
telling,
power.
he was telling Nancy, and Nancy was telling Ronald what to do.
Wow. So
It might have saved our lives. You don't know. You don't know. So it could be a lot worse. And I think we have some things to worry about right now where we don't even have to worry about a psychic. That would be the least of the issues. Yes.
I think what he was trying to ask is how do you go about learning to read people? What's the best way to learn how to do this?
The best way to do it is, like I said, you read some books on body language, you read some NLP books, which a lot of people may disagree with, you read some cold reading books, and put the three, and read my book, and put a few books on your shelf behind you, and then the real test is you just have to go out and do it. You have to be willing to go out and be wrong. And you'll be amazed how easy it is, because when you're wrong, people, again, it's your intention. If your intention is to help people, they'll flock around you. If your intention is to con them, they will run away from you. So it's like holding the bird. If you hold the bird too tight, you'll crush it. If you hold it too loose, it'll fly away. So it's learning how to look at body language, how to look at people's shoes. You look at their jewelry. You look at their hairstyle. You look at the lines in their face. You look at all these things, and it only takes 2 or 3 seconds. And by the time they sit down to talk to you, you've got them nailed. It's not always that easy, but...
You hear things, and you want to know if the story you've heard is true. So I'd like to ask you about this. It's often said, that Adolf Hitler believed in occult things and so on, and that he had an astrologer.
Hanussen.
Yeah, and is it the case then that in Britain they got an astrologer to cast Hitler's horoscope so they could figure out what Hitler's astrologer must be telling Hitler?
As far as I know, that is true. There was an incredible story. It's called. His name was Jan Hanussen. They made a movie about it many years ago. I can't remember the star of it. Anyway, it's a fantastic story, because the problem is that Hanussen said that he was from Denmark, and what happened later is they found out he was from a Jewish background, and Hitler did not like that, because he'd been advising Hitler and the SS for many, many years. And he actually predicted that the Reichstag building would burn down, and he did it as kind of a stunt. And then the Reichstag building burnt down, and the Nazis were mighty mad. They wanted to know, how did you know that was going to happen? So it is a true story. And the British MI5 or whatever it was at the time knew about that. So yeah, they just knew what his birthday was and cast the same chart and then started to follow that. I don't know if it helped that much or not, but it is, as far as I know, it's a true story.
How did that work out for Hitler? Did it work?
Not real well.
Kidding.
I used to watch James Van Praagh do his thing on TV, and I never believed he had that ability. But
That's
he
why
was,
you're here.
he was awfully good at it, wasn't he?
Oh, I thought he was terrible.
Was he?
I thought I could barely stand to watch him. But the thing is that you pack the audience with your believers, especially the front 10 rows, and it's an pretty easy thing to convince the rest of the audience. So
he was kind of like the only one doing it at the time on TV.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
You can find stories online of people that go to tapings, actually.
You can see Van Praagh failing on YouTube.
Raw footage, and it's
really, really awful.
Very illuminating.
So any more?
Anybody else?
Okay, so just please think critically. What's more likely? And I'll be out in front. I brought just a couple of my books if you're interested. So, and also please go to my website www.themarkedward.com, and there's a lot of books on palmistry and all this bullshit that you can learn about. But I do it with the intent of actually injecting some skepticism into my readings, believe it or not. And again, that's worked in my behalf because people cannot believe that I would actually tell them the truth, you know, but it's made a lot of psychics really angry. So thanks for coming. See you all later. Bye-bye.
Mark Edward, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Edward. Nicely done, sir. Okay, we're going to have a slightly extended break, and we've actually arranged it so that we can have some coffee for everybody, which is being set up.